Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And tonight I'd like to initiate this event with some words of thanks for the many people who work late into the night with us. I want to thank all of you for what you do and for staying here for the duration. And there are other persons who are without this facility who are also here until we leave. So I thank you for what you do. But I also tonight would like to make note of the Houston Chronicle. That's the largest newspaper in Houston, Texas. And I'd like to thank the Houston Chronicle for exercising some of its courage and some of its wisdom in terms of what it has produced with some of the news stories as of late. The Houston Chronicle has printed two stories that I'd like to focus on tonight. They're about policing in the state of Texas. And I have two documents that I'd like to submit for the record. They both deal with policing in Texas. The first one is styled Blistering Government Report, Blast Poor Training, Oversight of Texas Law Enforcement. The second one is an editorial styled Hairstylists Get More Training Than Texas Cops. That's unacceptable. I'd like to start with this one on the Blistering Government Report, that Blast Poor Training, Oversight of Texas Law Enforcement. This is from the Houston Chronicle. The Houston Chronicle indicates that last year more than 600 Texas law enforcement officers received a dishonorable discharge from their agencies for misconduct. Yet, more than a quarter of them were rehired to work as sworn officers. To qualify for a peace officer license, Texas cops need fewer hours of basic training than licensed cosmetologists and less than half the education required of air conditioning and refrigeration contractors. While the basic training requires officers to spend 48 hours on the firing range, it demands only 2 hours of civilian interaction instruction. Some things bear repeating. 48 hours on the firing range, 2 hours of civilian interaction instruction. Something's got to change, and I'm pleased to see that the Chronicle is a part of the movement to bring about the change, the reform that's necessary. This story goes on to read, and it's dated, by the way, November 30th, 2020, at 10:16 a.m. when it was last updated. But it goes on to indicate that in Texas, the regulation of law enforcement is by and large toothless. This is from a Sunset Committee report. I want to focus for just a moment now on why this is so important to me. I have a constituent who has made his transition, and it's because of an encounter with a peace officer in the state of Texas. I want to talk about Joshua Johnson and how the death of Joshua Johnson has had an impact on my life, and I believe on the lives of many others who are familiar with this story. I believe his case is one for us to examine another way of taking these cases of questionable shootings by police before the authorities. In the case of Joshua Johnson, he was a 35-year-old black man, and at 6 a.m. on April the 22nd, Joshua Johnson was house sitting for a neighbor. he went out of his home, or that home, and he went out into the street. He had an encounter with a peace officer who was there. Much has been said about the encounter, but what I will tell you now is based on facts, because we have an actual recording of what an officer has said that, in my opinion, has corrupted this investigation. Joshua had this encounter, and as a result, he was shot twice. He later on died. But let's not continue from this point. Let's step back for just a moment. His parents lived within yards of where he died. His father took his mother to work that morning, and when he returned, his son had lost his life. He acquired the opportunity to go and bring his wife to the area near the scene. And there was an investigating officer there. This officer took it upon himself to explain to the Berries, these are the parents of Joshua, Miss Wilhelmina Berry and Mr. Richard Berry. He took it upon himself to tell them what the facts were. He told them that their son approached this officer who was in a car, a vehicle, and that this officer told their son to lower a pistol. It was a BB pistol, according to the report. And the son had his phone flashlight on. He did not lower the pistol, and as a result, he was shot twice and he was killed. Now, the officer that called this to the attention of the Berries did not talk to the officer who did the shooting. He did not have the benefit of a video recording. He did not have the benefit of an autopsy report because one had not been performed. This was just 2 hours after Joshua's death. He did not have the benefit of a ballistics report. He did not talk to the medical examiner before making these statements. There was no way for him to know what he was saying, but he said it, and it has become the narrative for Joshua's death. This officer who shot Joshua twice, and this is the part that will tear at your heart. He shot Joshua twice and drove away. Shot him twice and left the scene and drove away and went around a corner. If he shot him because he was in fear of his life, and this is typically what's said, should he not have concern for the lives of people in that neighborhood that he was sworn to protect? Joshua didn't die immediately, but he did die within some short time after he was shot. So the Berries find themselves being told how their son died by someone who didn't see it, didn't have a video recording of it, didn't have an autopsy report, didn't have a ballistics report, didn't talk to the medical examiner. They had someone who literally gave them a story that some conclude was made up. Can you imagine? Your son is on the ground. Your son is there. You can't go over and see your son. And you're told that your son has died because he pulled a BB pistol on a peace officer. This is important in terms of what the officer said because of this training. 2 hours of civilian interaction instruction. Not nearly enough. That officer who was investigating should have been better trained such that he would not have told this story without having more of the actual facts, such that what he would tell them they could believe. No ballistics report, no autopsy report, no conversation with the medical examiner. Didn't talk to the officer who shot Joshua. Yet he told them that these were the facts in terms of how their son had lost his life. This officer needed better training. Unfortunately, in Texas, they are not getting this training at this time, and I'm proud of the Chronicle for pointing it out. But he also needs training in terms of how you present yourself and how you protect the people in the neighborhood that he was in. Let's talk about the shooter. How can a police officer shoot a person twice, not be fired upon, and simply drive away? It makes no sense. Drive away. If you believe that this person was a threat, wouldn't you want to protect the people that you are sworn to protect and defend by staying there? Or wouldn't you call for additional help? You shoot him twice and you leave. Joshua died. There's more to the story, but my point tonight is this. The Houston Chronicle has apparently decided that enough is enough and that there should be better policing in the state of Texas. I have decided that there is another way to deal with these cases. The grand jury is one means by which we can take cases to court. But there's another way. In Texas, we have something called a court of inquiry. I believe that it's time for us to use this tool, the court of inquiry, to get the facts and have transparency such that the public can understand what's happening that they cannot acquire intelligence on when these cases go before a grand jury, because it's all sworn to secrecy. No one can tell you what happened before the grand jury. Maybe the district attorney can give you some semblance of what happened. But the court of inquiry allows any person who believes that a crime has been committed to go before a district judge and explain what the facts are. And if that judge believes that there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed, then that judge goes to another judge, an administrative judge, and makes an appeal to the administrative judge to convene the court of inquiry. Then a third judge will actually conduct the court of inquiry. I think that in the state of Texas, because of the training or the absence thereof as it relates to our peace officers, this court of inquiry is going to be of great benefit as we move forward. It's time to change the paradigm. Simply allowing these cases to go before a grand jury and never know what actually happened is not enough. I believe that the Houston Chronicle has set a proper course for us to move in a direction that will change policing in the state of Texas. And I would invite persons to please read these two articles that I have called to your attention. Mr. Speaker, if there are no objections, I'd like to place both in the record.
Without objection.
And Mr. Speaker, I would like to leave you with these words and all who are listening. Joshua Johnson shouldn't have lost his life that morning. He shouldn't be another statistic. He should be with his parents. And my prayer is that these parents will receive the justice they deserve, because they have been waiting now more than 200 days, approximately 230 days, for some decision from law enforcement, and they've not had that decision. There is some hope. The district attorney's office is moving forward with an investigation. My prayer is that this family will receive the justice that they deserve, because their son shouldn't have lost his life on the 22nd of April this year at approximately 6:00 a.m. I yield back the balance of my time.
Pursuant to Section 4B of House Resolution 967, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m.